Chapter 1: The Periphery Guard. The smell of stale sweat, damp wool, and metallic, dried blood clung to the air of the outer garrison perimeter. It was a constant, gritty reminder of the king's brutal overthrow. Cai Rurik shifted his weight, his shoulders aching beneath the weight of his standard-issue armor. The moon, a silver shard hanging above the makeshift camp, offered little light and less comfort. With every heartbeat he felt the truth of his position, a dependable soldier, yet completely unremarkable. Deep down, he knew the truth: he was just one of the thousands of unclaimed males, lacking the mate bond that signaled true authority in Lycan society. This was the source of his fear of insignificance. He was guarding a cluster of supply tents, a task typically assigned to the lowest ranks. What followed was a familiar, sickening sight. Rurik, a bulky, claimed Lycan with the scarred face of a petty tyrant, was shoving a scrawny, weeping pup named Finn against a supply crate. "You dropped that ration again, boy," Rurik snarled, his voice thick with malicious enjoyment, "and you'll be the one replacing it." Cai felt the familiar surge of heat in his chest. It wasn't the easy fury of a dominant male, but the slow, burning resentment of a decent one who saw injustice. He stepped forward. As the wind shifted, carrying the sharp scent of Rurik's aggression toward him, Cai spoke, his voice low but clear. "That's enough, Rurik. Finn is still healing from the skirmish. The crate stays where it is, because the king's mandate clearly states all non-essential exertion is forbidden for the wounded." Rurik turned, his eyes narrowing, reflecting the moonlight like dirty gold coins. In that moment, the air thickened. The surrounding soldiers froze, waiting for the dominance ritual to play out. "Rurik," drawled, his tone heavy with indulgent condescension, like he was correcting a clumsy child. "The unclaimed speak when addressed. You'd do better to keep your nose in your own little perimeter, soldier." Cai kept his posture rigid, refusing to look away. Not only that, but his heart pounded so loudly he thought Rurik must hear it. "He's trying to make me back down. If I back down, I'm nothing." "I am addressed now," Cai replied, using a slower pace and slightly lower pitch to command attention. "Finn is under my perimeter's protection. Leave him." Truth be told, Kai's guts were churning. Rurik could easily beat him into the dirt right now. Which meant he was gambling on Rurik's inherent fear of the new King Raven's mandate. Rurik's response was a low, rumbling growl. The sound was primal, a threat that crawled beneath Kai's skin, reminding him of his lack of a pack backing him up. This is the curse of the unclaimed, Cai thought. You have no power base, you only have the law. Instead, Rurik laughed, a short, cruel bark. Because of that laugh, Cai felt the sting of public dismissal. Rurik shoved Finn one last time, hard enough to make him stumble, before turning his back on Cai. "Waste of time. Keep your watch, Rurik. We'll see how long your little honor lasts when real power takes hold." Rurik strode away, followed by his cronies, leaving behind a silence that roared with tension. Finn looked up at Cai, his eyes wide, a silent plea of gratitude. As a result, Cai felt a small, fleeting warmth, a hint of the significance he craved. "I want more than just scraps of respect." Next, Cai knew he couldn't let the injustice of Victor's past linger in the new regime. He had to find a way to make the reform stick. Chapter 2: The Weight of Loss. The camp quieted down, leaving Cai alone with the shifting shadows and the constant, chilling odor of loss. After that small victory against Rurik, the quiet felt heavier, like a shroud. Cai moved to the edge of the perimeter, gazing out over the dark expanse where the keep had seen its final, bloody moments. Meanwhile, he considered the two extremes of his world, the absolute tyranny of the overthrown victor, and the bewildering, idealistic mercy of the new regime under King Raven and Queen Elena. Not only that, but their decision to reject the ritual of claiming mates, the very thing Lycan tradition was built on, was a revolution in itself. He knelt by a small, makeshift memorial, a ring of blackened stones marking the grave of an unclaimed male who had died in the final push. As the wind shifted, carrying the scent of pine and frozen earth, Cai remembered the fallen soldier's name, Lysander. Lysander had died fighting for Raven's new vision, because he believed true strength came from justice, not terror. To make things worse, the sight brought back a deeply personal memory: his younger sister, Ilara. Ilara had been claimed by a cruel, high-ranking Lycan under Victor's old law, a bond that was essentially ownership. Cai had always wanted to protect her, but as an insignificant, unclaimed guard, he couldn't stop the ritual. The memory was a sharp shard of guilt in his heart. I failed her then. I will not fail this new chance at justice. He picked up a small, weathered lichen-toothed charm left by the mourners. He felt it, clear as day, the heavy, suffocating weight of the fear of insignificance. He realized his life had been a series of watching bad things happen from the periphery. A shadow fell across the perimeter line. Cai's hand instinctively went to the ceremonial blade Raven had gifted him. He still hadn't figured out why Raven had given him such a symbol of rank. But then, he saw it was just a younger male, no older than Finn, his shoulders slumped with grief. This was Jax, Finn's older brother, coming to mourn Lysander. It never ends, does it? Jax whispered, his voice hoarse, his gaze fixed on the stones. With every step he took toward the grave, he seemed to shed another layer of hope. The fight is over, Jax, Cai said, standing slowly. Raven has set the laws. We have a chance to build something better, because Victor's traditions only bred cruelty. Jax's voice trembled. Cruelty is all we know, Cai. My family, we saw things in the south. Things Raven's laws won't fix. There's a wolf there, a ghost. They say he's the real reason Victor fell, not Raven's army. He's still loose. No matter how hard she tried to forget, my mother whispers about him, a shadow wolf. I worry about the south. This was the first open loop and plot twist, the mention of a ghost wolf being the real reason for Victor's fall. It cast a sliver of doubt on the official story and hinted at a greater, unknown power at work, raising the stakes in suspense. Raven's army won the war, Jax, Cai stated firmly, though the story of the ghost wolf settled uncomfortably in his gut. A secret force, is that why the keep feels so fragile? Just like that, everything changed in Cai's perception. It wasn't just about reform, it was about containing a lingering, perhaps supernatural, threat. From there, he knew his desire for significance might intersect with a far greater danger. Chapter 3: The Sudden Summons. The summons was swift, jarring, and completely unexpected. Soon after Jax left, a regal, fully armored courier arrived at Cai's perimeter post. The courier's very presence, a male of alpha lineage and unquestionable rank, made the other guards snap to attention. Before he could move, Cai found himself marching back toward the heart of the keep, the sounds of his heavy boots echoing through the quiet, stone halls. The throne room was sparsely occupied but heavy with the scents of parchment, old power, and ozone. King Raven stood tall, his stance authoritative, yet his eyes held a weariness that spoke of sleepless nights and difficult choices. Beside him was Queen Elena. Her scent was soft, like rain on dry earth, but her gaze was sharp, like a hawk's. Raven did not use the language of battle, but of law. Cai Rurik, he began, his voice carrying the authority Cai had always respected. You stood watch while others feasted. You maintained the perimeter while others rioted. You did your duty, because you possess honor, not ambition. Cai stood at rigid attention. His heart skipped a beat. Honor, not ambition. That was the highest compliment a Lycan could be paid in this new regime. My queen and I have observed your conduct, Rurik. We see a man who understands that strength lies in restraint, not domination. We see a man who can uphold the new law, not just enforce the old fear. This was the direct challenge to Cai's internal flaw. Raven was offering him significance, but resting it entirely on the strength he feared was his weakness. The Southern Territories are in turmoil. Victor's old beta, Kale, is stirring up the pack. He believes our new laws are weak. He believes an unclaimed soldier like you is an easy target, Raven stated, his tone shifting from philosophical to deadly serious. Which meant this was not a promotion, it was a test. Even so, Cai found himself asking the strategic question, "Why me, Your Majesty?" Surely an established alpha. An established alpha has too many ties to the past, Elena interrupted, her voice soft but absolute. As if fate demanded it, she fixed Cai with a piercing look. You are neutral, Rurik. You are the embodiment of the unclaimed who earned their worth through principle. You will bring justice to the South. You will be their interim governor. What's worse, Raven picked up a heavy, polished packleader mantle, an ornate garment that symbolized absolute authority over a territory. He placed it over Cai's shoulders. The weight was physical, pressing down on Cai, suffocating his fear of insignificance with the unbearable pressure of responsibility. I am worthy. I must be worthy. Your initial goal is this, Raven declared. Go to the Ironwood Den, disarm Kale's political support. Enforce the laws of respect, not tradition. Earn their loyalty without resorting to Victor's cruelty. Prove that leadership is stronger than dominance. In the quiet that followed, the reality of the mandate crashed over Cai. He was being sent into a nest of vipers, tasked with changing their fundamental nature, equipped only with a fragile set of ideals. Just like that, everything changed. Cai was no longer guarding a fence, he was defending an entire revolution. Before the words left her lips, Elena gave him a small, almost empathetic nod. The Southern Territories are waiting. And they will not be welcoming. This is an ambitious set of requirements, perfect for an intense, emotionally charged paranormal romance. We will focus on building a vivid world through Cai's eyes, using dynamic language, strong dialogue, and the required transitional flow to maximize engagement for an audiobook audience. Chapter 4, The King's Mandate. Cai felt the heavy, ornate mantle press into his shoulders, a physical anchor of the mandate. Governor of the Southern Territories. The title tasted like ash and glory all at once. In the quiet that followed King Raven's declaration, Cai couldn't see the triumph, he only saw the trap. His military training took over. He snapped a salute, his hand hitting the silver plate on his chest with a dull thud. I accept the oath, Your Majesty. I will uphold the law. You will do more than uphold it, Rurik, Queen Elena stated, her soft voice nonetheless carrying the metallic tang of command. As if pulled by a string, Cai met her gaze. You will make them believe in it. Go now. Go before the traditionalists here realize what we've done. Cai understood the subtext, his appointment was an audacious political maneuver, relying on his unclaimed status as a symbol of neutrality. Because of that, his perceived weakness was, ironically, the source of his current authority. He was escorted out quickly, the heavy mantle dragging against the stone floor. He felt the curious, almost mocking stares of the few high-ranking Lycans who witnessed his sudden elevation. Not only that, but the scorn in their eyes was a familiar, painful echo of Gorik's earlier dismissal. They think this is a joke. They think I'm a boy playing dress-up. Cai retreated to the garrison's armory to prepare. After that overwhelming meeting, he found himself alone, staring at the polished ceremonial blade. It felt wrong in his hand, too ornate, too much a symbol of the very dominance he was meant to dismantle. Still, he knew he couldn't arrive in the South looking like the low-ranking guard he truly was. He needed the facade of power. He put on a fresh, dark tunic and sturdy traveling leathers, securing the heavy leader's mantle over his chest. As the silence stretched, he consciously left his old, small dagger behind. No remnants of the past. No hiding. This moment became the crucial decision point. He was willingly choosing the path of immense pressure, fueled by his desperate need to finally matter. He was betting his life that his unwavering moral compass was stronger than Cale's brutality. Despite that commitment, a chilling memory resurfaced, his sister Lara's terrified eyes before she was claimed. Did I always choose duty over courage? That's why he felt a desperate, almost reckless energy. He wouldn't watch from the periphery anymore. Meanwhile, his small, hastily assembled escort, 3 quiet, disciplined soldiers loyal to Raven, waited for him outside the armory. Next, he gave the court order to move out, turning his back completely on the keep and the life of quiet duty he had always known. Chapter 5: The Ride to Hostility. The southern roads were less traveled and quickly devolved into muddy, ancient tracks. What followed was a silence broken only by the rhythmic crunch of hooves and the creak of leather. The air grew colder, heavier, less of the mountain pine scent of the keep, and more of damp, dense earth and wild animal musk. Cai rode at the head of the small column, trying to embody the authority his rank now demanded. But then, the anxiety clawed at the edges of his resolve. They want me to rule a pack that prides itself on brutal strength. What happens when I tell them they can't shed blood in a dominance ritual anymore? He felt the temptation rise, hot and insidious. Maybe it was fate that he had witnessed Victor's power up close. I could use fear. Just a little. Just enough to secure compliance, because failure here means civil war. He closed his eyes for a beat. No. That was Cale's path. That was the easy corruption he hated. He felt it, clear as day, the choice between proving his worth by succeeding quickly, or proving his honor by succeeding rightly. He focused on the new laws Raven had outlined. Due process. Restitution. Respect. He made a silent oath to himself. He would enforce them perfectly, because only perfect enforcement would shield him from the inevitable mutiny. After that internal struggle, he tried talking to his lead guard, a quiet male named Torvin. Tell me about the Ironwood Den, Torvin. Truly. Torvin glanced at the grim forests surrounding them. As the wind shifted, the scent of danger seemed to intensify. It's harsh, Governor. Built like a siege weapon. The Den Master, Cale, inherited beta status under Victor. He's a true believer in the old ways. Dominance is their prayer. Not only that, but their loyalty is forged in blood. And Liana Vane? Cai asked, recalling the name on the dispatch. The lieutenant? She's a good medic, fiercely protective of the pack, because she remembers what Victor's carelessness cost them. But she's cynical. She thinks Raven's kindness is a weakness the South can't afford. Soon after this conversation, the terrain began to rise sharply. The forest canopy grew thicker, filtering the daylight until the world was cast in perpetual twilight. The moment their eyes locked on the imposing, dark fortress looming on the distant ridge, the silence of the escort grew heavy with dread. The Ironwood Den. It wasn't just a building, it looked like a snarling, stone beast carved into the mountain pass. With every heartbeat, Cai felt the dread solidify into something cold and hard, pure determination. He would need every shred of honor he possessed to walk into that hostility. Next, he would face Liana Vane, his first true test. Chapter 6: Crossing the Threshold. The gate of the Ironwood Den was thick, blackwood banded with iron, a permanent shield against the world. It groaned open with a sound like a tortured beast. Just like that, everything changed. Cai rode inside, followed by his small escort. The den's courtyard was packed with lichen males, but they weren't welcoming. They were waiting. Their scent was a thick, challenging mix of territorial aggression and open skepticism. With a single glance, Cai noted their posture, shoulders wide, hands loose, every wolf ready to spring. A lichened female stepped forward from the line. This had to be Liana Vane. She was tall, with the lean, powerful build of someone who lived hard. Her eyes, the color of storm clouds, showed not fear, but a weary, almost bored contempt. She wore patched leathers and smelled distinctly of herbs and medicinal smoke. Cai dismounted, forcing himself to move slowly, deliberately. He approached Liana, offering a neutral, respectful nod. "Lieutenant Vane. I am Governor Rurik. I carry King Raven's mandate." Liana didn't return the nod. Her face remained a rigid mask. Her voice trembled slightly, but not from fear, from thinly veiled scorn. "Welcome, Governor Rurik. We've been expecting an envoy. Though, truth be told, we expected someone, claimed." The word, spoken with such soft malice, was a deliberate jab at Cai's greatest insecurity. It instantly stripped the mantle of all its political weight. Cai felt the familiar heat of rage, but forced his body to remain still, channeling the advice he had just given himself, restrained his strength. "My status is irrelevant," Cai replied, his voice calm, but with a new edge of authority. "My authority comes from the king's law. I am here to ensure that law is observed. I understand you maintained order after Victor's fall. I thank you for that. Because of that, I look forward to your counsel." Liana studied him for a long, uncomfortable moment. The space between them burned with unsaid conflict. "Counsel?" she asked, a dry, bitter laugh escaping her. As if summoned, a small group of burly lichens gathered behind her, their eyes fixed on Cai. "Governor, we don't need advice on order. We need protection. We need strength. We have our ways here. You come with new rules and a small guard, and you look like you haven't seen a real fight in years." Cai straightened. He realized this was his first major confrontation. He could feel the eyes of the entire pack watching, measuring him. "My mandate is clear, Lieutenant. The blood debt ritual ends today. Any further practice of Victor's cruelties will be met with the full force of the keep's law. I suggest you inform your pack." Liana's storm-colored eyes flashed. Her breath caught a sudden, sharp intake. The blood debt, a ritual of public shaming and injury, was central to the pack's identity. "You don't understand this pack, Governor. You ban the blood debt, and you invite chaos." "I invite leadership, Lieutenant." "Not dominance," Cai countered, letting the words hang in the heavy air. Instead of arguing, Liana simply turned on her heel, giving a curt order to one of her men. Next, Cai knew he had to find a way to rule this place before the pack tore his ideals, and him, apart. He had crossed the threshold, and the hostility was absolute. Chapter 7: The Cold Authority. The Ironwood Den was cold, damp, and smelled of old, bitter resentments. After that hostile reception from Liana, Cai knew he couldn't afford to show uncertainty. He needed to find the leader's chambers. He found the room easily enough, but it had been meticulously stripped bare, no furniture, no comforts, only a thin layer of dust on the stone floor. It was a deliberate message: you have no power here. Not only that, but the very stone walls seemed to watch him, heavy and oppressive, designed to reinforce the belief that authority must be carved through force. He ordered his escort to secure the adjoining corridor, forcing himself to choose a secondary, drafty room instead of demanding the pack furnish the main chambers. Leadership is about resilience, not demanding comforts. Because of that, he chose to sleep on a mat on the cold floor, using his traveling pack as a pillow. He felt the cold seep into his bones, a constant reminder of the den's uncompromising nature. Meanwhile, he reviewed the census scrolls left behind by Victor's regime. The paper was brittle, and the handwriting was sloppy, revealing just how little Victor cared about the actual people here. What followed was a sickening realization. Many of the names listed as missing were lycans he knew had died in the brutal blood debt rituals, likely never mourned. This place is built on cruelty. Still, Cai couldn't afford despair. He sought out Liana Vane. He found her in the infirmary, a small, warm space smelling sharply of herbs and antiseptic, the only patch of true competence in the Denver. She was quietly stitching a deep wound on a male's arm. "Lieutenant Vane," Cai began, keeping his voice level. "I require a list of resources. Food, medicine, and personnel. I also need to begin the process of documenting the new laws." Liana didn't look up. The space between them burned with distrust. Her voice trembled with fatigue, but her words were precise, like surgical cuts. "The resources are where they've always been, Governor. In the caches. And the laws? We know the only law that matters here, because it's the one that keeps us alive, might. Might is what brought down Victor," Cai countered, walking closer. As the air thickened, his presence seemed to bother her. "Leadership means providing for your people, not just beating them into compliance. I saw the scrolls. You have missing inventory. Supplies are being diverted." Liana finally raised her head. Her storm-colored eyes were cold. "Of course, supplies are diverted. We had to feed the wounded. We had to pay off the internal debts Victor left, because the keep didn't send help for years. Don't mistake survival for sabotage, Rurik. Your king's laws won't fill empty stomachs." Just like that, everything changed in Cai's understanding. The insubordination wasn't just political, it was rooted in real, pragmatic desperation. Next, he knew he needed a small win, something tangible to show the pack that his honor was useful. Chapter 8, The Shadow of Kale. Cai decided to use a different tactic, visibility. After that frustrating encounter with Liana, he spent the morning personally inspecting the food stores, hoping to catch a thief or, failing that, simply show his face. The stores were orderly, yet Cai's enhanced lichen senses caught a subtle anomaly, a thin trail of dried mud, meticulously swept, leading away from the back of the building. Despite that clean surface, Cai followed the trail to a poorly secured cellar entrance. Inside, he found 3 mid-rank lichens loading sacks of preserved meat and grain onto a small cart, a clear act of misappropriation. "Halt!" Cai commanded, his voice sharp and loud, echoing in the confined space. The 3 lichens froze. One of them, a thick-necked male named Roar, turned slowly, his hands sticky with grease. What followed was the familiar posturing. "Governor Rurik," Roar sneered, his tone heavy with indulgent condescension, mimicking Gorik's earlier dismissal. "We were just ensuring these goods reached the right people. The people who matter." Cai drew his ceremonial blade only a fraction, enough to show the polished steel. In that moment, he felt the raw, seductive pull of dominance, the desire to snarl, to throw Roar against the wall, to end the conversation with brute force. It would be so much faster. But he resisted. Instead, he rested his hand on the hilt, keeping his voice steady and low. "The law is clear. The den's resources belong to the den. Theft under my authority is treason against the king. You will return the supplies and serve 3 days cleaning the infirmary." Roar burst out laughing. As the silence stretched, the sound was brutal and mocking. "Cleaning? Victor would have broken our bones. You think 3 days scrubbing floors is punishment? You are weak, Unclaimed." To make things worse, Roar leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You think Kale is gone? He's still here, Rurik. He taught us how to survive. He taught us how to lead. He's the strength this den respects, because he knows that blood is thicker than your paper law." This was the first direct mention of Kale as the ongoing source of conflict, not just a distant figure. This was a clear open loop. Cai is influencing the den, but where is he hiding? Cai felt his fear of insignificance twist sharply. Roar was right. The punishment was laughably weak by their standards. But Cai's core strength, his unwavering moral compass, held fast. Victor's punishment breeds resentment. Mine breeds compliance and restitution. You will comply, Cai stated, his gaze unflinching. Not only that, but he was betting his life on the fact that if he broke the law now, he'd lose his only leverage. The tension broke. Roar, seeing the cold resolve in Cai's eyes and perhaps fearing the official king's response more than Cai's personal weakness, eventually backed down with a sneer. Fine. The infirmary. We'll show the medic. Next, Cai knew he had gained a tiny victory, but he needed a true ally, and that ally was currently cleaning up after him. Chapter 9, The Impossible Task. Liana was furious. Soon after Roar and his grumbling cronies arrived to scrub the infirmary floors, Liana tracked Cai down in his makeshift quarters. Her scent was a volatile mix of medicinal herbs and pure, unadulterated frustration. Cleaning the infirmary? Liana demanded, throwing a heavy cloth at his feet. Her breath caught with anger. You call that discipline, Governor? Because of that joke of a sentence, those men have already been laughing at your rules. They will steal again by sundown. Cai picked up the cloth, using the delay to calm his own defensiveness. As the wind shifted through the drafty room, he felt the heavy weight of her condemnation. If I had beaten them, Lieutenant, they would have hated me and waited for Cai to rise. Now, they hate me, and they're mopping your floor. I call that restitution. You call that an invitation to mutiny. Liana countered, her voice low and dangerous. You don't understand, Rurik. This pack needs to fear the law. Not only that, but they need to fear you. If they don't see dominance, they see a gap, and Cai is going to step right through it. Cai finally slammed the cleaning cloth onto the table. The moment their eyes locked, the political tension flared into something intense and personal. Tell me why you fear Cai so much, Lieutenant, Cai challenged, leaning forward. You kept order. You have the respect of the pack. Why do you insist that brutality is the only way to save them? Liana flinched. Her chest ached, and for the first time, Cai saw a flash of deep, genuine pain beneath the cynicism. She didn't know what scared her more, his naive hope or the return of the old terror. She felt it, clear as day, the cold memory of her past trauma rising. Victor ordered the blood debt ritual on a young male I swore to protect. He was unclaimed, just like you. They did it publicly. I watched him die, because I was just the medic. I had no power. The only thing that stops that kind of cruelty is the absolute certainty of an iron fist. Cai has that fist. You have a prayer book. Cai felt a pang of empathy, understanding her connection to loss, the same feeling he carried for Alara. Despite that revelation, he had to push back. I am not Victor. My law protects the weak, Lieutenant. If Cai is preparing a mutiny, I need to know the layout of this den, I need to know who is truly loyal, and I need to know where his resources are. I need your deep knowledge of pack psychology. He didn't demand the information, he asked for it, respectfully. He was offering her significance, too, the chance to save her pack through knowledge, not just bandages. In that moment, Liana saw the sincerity in his eyes. Next, their uneasy truce would solidify into a tentative alliance as they began to truly share the burden of reform. This is the critical stage where the stakes truly explode. We'll push Cai and Liana's alliance to its breaking point, reveal Cai as an immediate threat, the midpoint shift, and force Cai to escalate his methods while maintaining his core principles. Chapter 10, The Failing Law. Cai felt the heavy grind of the den's resistance. After that tense confrontation with Liana, he had secured a reluctant truce, but the pack's compliance was only skin deep. At the same time, he was trying to implement Raven's new system of restitution, having offenders work to repair the pack, rather than endure brutal discipline. What followed was a disaster. 3 key food caches were mysteriously ransacked in one night. No guards saw anything. No scent trails led anywhere conclusive. The only thing missing was non-perishable food, enough to sustain a small, hidden warband. Cai stood in the main storage room, the scent of fresh looting heavy in the cold air. Not only that, but the pack was murmuring. The fear was spreading, Raven's law is too soft to protect us. Liana arrived, her usual stoicism replaced by a deep, sharp line of stress around her mouth. She didn't bother with greetings. She felt it, clear as day, the imminent failure of Cai's mission. The perimeter guards are loyalists, Rurik. They wouldn't steal, Liana stated, scanning the room with a medic's clinical efficiency. But they let the thieves walk right past. Why? Cai asked, his voice low with frustration. My honesty is being used against me. Liana sighed, a sound heavy with the weight of the den's history. Her voice trembled slightly, conveying the fear that her past trauma might repeat itself. Cale's network is still woven into the foundations of this Denver. They fear him more than they respect the king. They fear the consequences of a strong leader, because the strong leader here has always been cruel. I need to find Cale's cache, Liana. He's not stealing food to feed the hungry, he's preparing for a siege, which means he's gathering wolves loyal to the old ways. And you think you can find it by looking at paper? Liana scoffed, crossing her arms. Despite that skepticism, her eyes softened momentarily. The den is massive. Victor built secret tunnels for arms smuggling. Cale knows them all. He lived in those shadows. Cai looked at her, his fear of insignificance giving way to cold, tactical clarity. Then you must show me the shadows, Lieutenant. I can't enforce the law if I can't catch the lawbreaker. At that moment, their alliance shifted. It moved past reluctant tolerance and into true, shared purpose, driven by their mutual hatred of what Cale represented. Liana hesitated, looking at the door, ensuring they were alone. Next, she began to speak, her voice a low conspiratorial whisper. Chapter 11, The Midpoint, A Traitor's Proof. Liana led Cai deep into the oldest, least-used service tunnels beneath the den, a maze smelling of damp earth, centuries of decay, and something metallic, like stale oil. As the wind shifted through the dark passages, it carried the oppressive silence of a forgotten world. This network connects to the main armory, but also leads out to the mountain passes, Liana explained, her footsteps sure in the darkness. With every step he took, Cai was reminded that he was completely reliant on her deep knowledge of pack psychology and geography. They stopped at a section of ancient, loose stone. Liana pointed to a symbol carved into the rock, a faded lichen emblem with 2 curved lines beneath it, the sign of a specific, brutal unit Victor had favored. Not only that, but the symbol was marked with a fresh scrape. This is a message point. Cale's unit used this mark. It means rally to arms, Liana explained, her voice low. It went up last night. He's mobilizing. Cai ran his hand over the rough stone. His heart skipped a beat. This isn't just about stealing food. This is war. This was the midpoint shift, the crisis had just escalated from governance failure to immediate danger. He's planning to attack the keep? Cai questioned, his voice tight. Liana shook her head. Worse. He's planning to take this den, publicly, and offer it to the rival northern packs as a base. He wants to prove Raven's rule is soft. He's planning an execution. What's worse, Liana pulled a brittle, folded parchment from a crack in the wall, a document that smelled strongly of Cale. It was an old list, signed by Cale, detailing Lycans who had been disposed of for showing weakness under Victor's rule. At the bottom was a fresh edition, scrawled hastily, Rurik. Public example. Cai looked at the death list. The names of the dead were not just soldiers, they were family males, teachers, and healers. He felt it, clear as day, the cold, hard evidence of Cale's cruelty. Because of that, his internal conflict vanished. This wasn't about proving the new law, it was about fighting for survival. He intends to frame my murder as a dominance challenge, Cai stated, his voice now flat and lethal. Liana nodded. At that moment, her cynical mask cracked. Go back, Rurik. Go back to the keep. Tell Raven. You cannot win this with honor. You have to fight Cale the old way, and you will die. Despite that desperate plea, Cai realized his commitment to the new laws was now absolute. If he ran, Cale would win, and his fear of insignificance would be confirmed forever. He wouldn't fail here. Just like that, everything changed. Chapter 12, The New Authority. Cai didn't return to the keep. He had to act now, using the small window before Cale's plot could fully ripen. After that terrifying discovery, he knew his only chance was to use Cale's fear of exposure against him. He had Liana, using her deep knowledge of pack psychology, identify a small group of younger Lycans who were growing weary of Cale's violent bullying, but lacked the courage to defy tradition. Because of that insight, Cai called a public assembly, demanding all pack members gather. The courtyard was tense. Cai stood on a makeshift platform, wearing his heavy mantle. He looked directly at the faces of Cale's known sympathizers. Meanwhile, Liana stood subtly near the den exit, a quiet promise of backup. Cai didn't mention Cale or the list. Instead, he presented a dispute that had been simmering. An older male, Boren, had brutally destroyed the small garden of a young Lycan family because the scent of flowers offended his superior rank. The pack expected the young Lycan to pay Boren a fine for his insolence. What followed was Kai's strategic move. Under the old law, Cai stated, his voice resonating across the stone, Boren's act was permissible. Under the new law, it is not. Boren will not be punished with pain, because that only breeds more pain. He paused, letting the silence roar. He could hear the murmurs of disbelief. This is it. They think I'm weak. Boren will compensate the family by working for 3 weeks to rebuild the garden, and for 3 weeks, he will serve as the protector of that garden. He will be responsible for life, not destruction. The crowd was stunned. This wasn't weakness, it was a punishment of responsibility, a kind of enforced decency they hadn't seen before. Boren, the proud Lycan, looked mortified at the idea of forced nurturing. To make things worse, the young Lycan family, the victims, looked up at Cai with a glimmer of genuine hope. Just like that, everything changed for a handful of witnesses. The younger Lycans who were tired of the bloodshed nodded slowly. Cai had used leadership, a public display of fairness and justice, to achieve a victory that brute dominance never could. Next, this small public success would be the catalyst for Cale's direct, furious response, propelling the story into its point of no return. Chapter 13, The Unclaimed Risk-Taker. The success of the garden ruling had bought Cai less than a day of grudging peace. After that small victory, the murmurings shifted, from weakness to unpredictability. Meanwhile, Cai and Liana met in the silent, cold service tunnels, the hidden passage now their unofficial command center. You won over the younger wolves, Rurik. That was good, Liana admitted, her voice low and tight with urgency. Her breath caught as she spoke. But Cale will see this as a declaration of war. He won't allow responsibility to be used as punishment, because that destroys the power of fear. Then we strike the source of his fear, Cai replied, unrolling a brittle map Liana had procured. As the wind shifted through the tunnels, it carried the scent of Cale's last known supply route. Cai pointed to a key bridge on the map, the only easy route Cale's hidden loyalists could use to bring in weapons. We secure this bridge. We don't guard it with soldiers. We guard it with law. We put the offenders from the storage room, Roar and his men, on bridge duty for their restitution. That's why I want them to defend the very supplies they tried to steal. Liana stared at him, her storm-colored eyes wide with disbelief. The space between them burned with the sheer recklessness of the plan. You're arming Cale's sympathizers and putting them on the most strategically vital point? Are you mad? Not only that, but they will let Cale walk right across. They will join him. Cai gripped the mantle around his shoulders, feeling the heavy, uncomfortable weight of his new rank. He had to trust his principles. If they betray the den while wearing the king's colors, the entire pack will see their treachery. If they hold the bridge, they start believing in restitution over rebellion. Truth be told, this is our biggest risk, and the one that forces Cale out of the shadows. It's a commitment, Lieutenant. We burn the bridge back to the old ways right now. Despite that immense risk, Liana, seeing the unshakable resolve in his eyes, gave a slow, reluctant nod. In that moment, she committed fully. Cai had crossed his final internal boundary. He was now a leader, willing to use radical, non-traditional strategies. Next, they would wait for Cale's inevitable countermove, knowing their lives hung on the honor of 3 unwilling guards. Chapter 14, The Antagonist's Fury. The waiting was a slow, agonizing descent into tension. Soon after Roar and his men were placed on bridge duty, grumbling, but too confused by the unconventional punishment to refuse, the den grew eerily quiet. It was calm before the storm. Cai was in his quarters, reviewing old military tactics, trying to find a non-lethal way to counter a full-scale Lycan assault. He felt it, clear as day, the rising tremor of fear in the den, amplified by his Lycan senses. But then, the silence was shattered. A brutal, agonizing scream ripped through the den, followed by the sound of fighting, not the controlled scuffle of a dominance challenge, but the frantic, panicked chaos of a slaughter. Cai ran toward the main courtyard, Liana following close behind, her hand gripping a blood-stained scalpel. What followed was a scene of horror. One of the den's respected elders, a female healer known for her kindness, lay bleeding on the stones. Standing over her was a Lycan male, eyes wild, foaming at the mouth, and Cai instantly recognized him as one of Cale's inner circle. He attacked her! He said she was an enemy of the true pack, someone screamed. The moment their eyes locked across the courtyard, Cale's man roared, challenging Cai directly. The den was instantly split, some males rallying to the attacker, others recoiling in terror. This was Cale's move, an orchestrated, violent incident designed to force Cai to either kill, proving his dominance but destroying his credibility, or fail to act, proving his weakness. Cai forced his internal monologue to slow. No killing. Law, not blood. Lieutenant Vane, secure the victim. Cai shouted, drawing his ceremonial blade and leveling it, not at the male's throat, but toward the open air. He felt the raw, seductive pull of fighting dirty, of ending this quickly. You are under arrest for attempted murder and treason against the king. Cai roared, projecting authority rather than raw aggression. Because of that, his stance confused the loyalists. They expected a brawl, not a citation. The attacker lunged, a blur of muscle and malice. Cai met the blow, deflecting it not with brute strength, but with a trained, precise movement, using the ceremonial blade to trap the attacker's wrist. He quickly disarmed him and, with a move focused entirely on control rather than harm, slammed the attacker to the stone, pinning him. I am claiming this male for due process. Cai yelled, loud enough for the entire den to hear. With every heartbeat, he showed them that law could be stronger than fury. Next, Cai would be forced to react directly to Cai's successful use of law, escalating the fight beyond violence and into outright rebellion. Chapter 15: The Fire of Treachery. Cai had the attacker bound and secured in the den's old, reinforced holding cell. The small act of successfully using the law to make an arrest had quieted the pack, but their loyalty was fragile. After that terrifying incident, Liana returned from tending the healer, her hands still stained with blood. "He's stable. But Cai is not stupid, Rurik. This was a signal. He needed you to make an arrest, and he knew you wouldn't kill his man. He's going to make this public." Cai nodded grimly. He needed a distraction. "I need to move the prisoner to a more secure location immediately." Instead of transferring the prisoner, Cai's direct response arrived, a diversionary attack. A sudden explosion rocked the den's eastern perimeter, a sharp, smoky stench of gunpowder and burnt wood flooded the compound. An ambush! There at the eastern wall! Chaos erupted. While her pulse raced, Liana grabbed Cai's arm. "They're not attacking the wall. They're attacking the holding cells." She didn't know what scared her more, the chaos or Cai's grim focus. Cai sprinted toward the holding cells. What followed was an intense, short clash. Cai's main body of loyalists, led by Roar, who had abandoned his bridge post, had overwhelmed the few guards and freed the attacker. Cai arrived just as the group was making their escape into the network of tunnels. He saw Roar, looking triumphant, and saw the freed attacker, spitting fury. Just like that, everything changed. Cai, who was directing the escape from the mouth of the tunnel, turned and locked eyes with Cai. Cai was massive, scarred, and radiated a brutal, absolute authority forged in the old regime. "You chose paper over blood, Rurik." Cai's voice boomed, raw and vibrating with menace. "You chose weakness. The den chooses me." Cai did not wait for a fight. He vanished into the darkness with his wolves. To make things worse, Roar tossed a small, heavy pouch at Cai's feet. It contained the ceremonial buttons from the uniforms of the 3 loyalists Cai had put on bridge duty. "The betrayal is complete." Cai looked down at the buttons. The last hope for a peaceful transition was gone. As the truth unraveled, he realized he had been completely exposed and outmaneuvered. He was wounded, not physically, but spiritually. He had committed fully to leadership, and in return, he had lost the den to dominance. Chapter 16: The Ambush and Retreat. The scent of burnt wood and betrayal was thick in the Denver. After that devastating escape, Cai didn't wait. He knew Cai would consolidate power immediately, and staying meant guaranteed execution. Cai, Liana, and his 4 remaining loyal guards moved quickly toward the den's secret mountain exit, the same one Liana had shown him. He felt it, clear as day, the profound sense of failure settling over him, colder than the stone. "I lost. I tried to lead with honor, and all I bought was death." But then, Cai was ready. They were barely halfway to the tunnels when the ambush struck. Without warning, the passage ahead erupted in a cascade of rock and shadow. Cai's loyalists poured out, led by Roar, their faces smeared with war paint. "Traitors!" Roar roared, leading the charge. "The den is ours. Dominance will rule." The fight was fast, brutal, and asymmetrical. Cai drew his ceremonial blade, forcing himself to aim for disarming blows, not fatal ones. The moment their eyes locked, Cai met Roar's charge. Cai fought with trained precision, not brute rage, but Roar's ferocity was fueled by Cai's bloodlust. What followed was a desperate scramble. Cai parried a vicious blow, but the force drove him back against the wall. Because of that momentary distraction, one of Cai's loyal guards, a young male named Elian, lunged forward to intercept a strike meant for Cai. A sickening crunch echoed in the stone passage. Elian crumpled instantly, a gash across his chest, dead. To make things worse, Cai heard Liana's choked cry of despair. Loss. Again. Cai's own arm was sliced deep, the warm, sticky blood blooming through his tunic. Retreat! Now! Cai yelled, his voice raw with defeat. He grabbed Liana, pulling her toward a narrow bolt hole. Despite that injury, he used the last of his strength to shove a heavy supply crate in the path of the pursuers. Just like that, everything changed. They tumbled out onto the mountainside, scrambling for cover. Meanwhile, the sight of Elian's body, a young life sacrificed for Cai's failed ideals, burned itself into Cai's memory. He had failed the pack, and now he had failed his own men. Next, he had to face the deeper consequences of that failure, both internally and externally. Chapter 17, The Betrayal of Hope. They hiked for hours through the unforgiving, icy mountain terrain, stopping only when the scent of the den was completely gone. Cai's wounded arm throbbed, a dull, insistent pain. After that bloody retreat, Liana's face was frozen in a mask of grim despair, her attention focused entirely on tending his wound. They found refuge in a cold, secluded cave, a place of utter silence. As the silence stretched, Cai felt his resolve crumble. He was a fugitive, injured, and responsible for the death of a good soldier. I should have never come here. I was right, I am just an insignificant guard. Not only that, but then came the final blow. A runner, a terrified young lichen Cai recognized as working in the den's messenger service, found them. He handed Cai a hastily folded, sealed parchment. It's from the lieutenant, the messenger stammered, his eyes darting toward Liana, who was treating Cai's wound. He said she sent it, to all remaining loyalists. Cai ripped open the scroll. His vision blurred, not from pain, but from the words. To those still following Rurik, I have seen the truth. His honor is weakness. His laws failed us. He is responsible for the recent violence and the death of Elian. Kale offers strength. Return to the den now. Submit to the new, strong leadership. I have. Lieutenant Liana Vane. Cai froze. His heart skipped a beat, followed by a rush of cold, sickening realization. He looked at Liana, who was kneeling beside him, her brow furrowed in concentration as she stitched his wound. Liana's voice trembled slightly, asking about the pain, but Cai barely heard her. She sent it while she was with me? Truth be told, the communication was a perfect, calculated piece of psychological warfare. Because of that betrayal, it destroyed the last piece of faith Cai had built, not in Raven's laws, but in human connection. He saw the cold, cynical pragmatism Liana had displayed in Act 3, it had returned, stronger than ever. Maybe it was fate, Cai thought bitterly, that the only person he allowed himself to trust had been the one to deliver the final, devastating sentence. He crumpled the parchment in his uninjured hand, his knuckles white. He looked at the discarded ceremonial mantle lying in the dirt. Next, he would face the full force of his shattered identity. Chapter 18, Dark Night of the Soul. Cai was completely isolated, emotionally and physically. After that revelation, Liana left him alone, stepping out into the cold mouth of the cave. She sensed his need for space, but Cai only saw her avoidance as confirmation of her guilt. He stared at the small, insignificant dagger he had kept hidden since, a symbol of the small, unnoticed soldier he used to be. He felt the raw, seductive pull of utter failure. I was right. I was never meant to lead. I was chosen for my neutrality, not my strength. My honor was seen as a weakness. My mission was a failure, and Elian is dead, because I refused to use the force I needed. His fear of insignificance returned, crushing him. It wasn't just that he had failed the king, he had failed his own core strength. He had gambled on leadership, and the house had won, demanding a blood price. He closed his eyes, and his thoughts spun. If I had just been cruel, if I had broken Roar's bones, if I had publicly shamed Cale's supporters, I would still be in the Denver. I could have saved Elian. Dominance is the only language they understand. In the quiet that followed, Cai almost accepted the dark truth, that he was inadequate and the world was simply too cruel for honor to survive. His entire life's philosophy, his reason for enduring the pain of being unclaimed, was invalid. He picked up the small dagger. He wanted to go back to the den, fight Cale alone, and die with at least some dignity. This was the crucible moment, the choice between succumbing to despair or finding a reason to stand again. But then, he remembered the look in the eyes of the young family he had saved with the garden ruling. He remembered the small, fleeting hope in Finn's eyes when he faced down Gorik. Honor is harder. It demands more creativity. It demands more strength than simply throwing a punch. Just like that, everything changed. He wouldn't fight Cale's way. He would fight better. He would use Cale's cruelty against him. The tension broke, not in surrender, but in a focused, white-hot resolve. Next, a small, desperate sound outside the cave signaled that the true path to victory was about to appear. Chapter 19, The Spark of Retaliation. The small, desperate sound outside the cave was a low, rattling sob. After that internal reckoning, Cai stood up, leaving the mantle and the betrayal note discarded on the floor. He gripped the dagger, not as a symbol of past insignificance, but as a tool of survival. He stepped out and found Liana Vane huddled against the rock face, not weeping, but vomiting from sheer exhaustion and stress. She was shivering, her body finally betraying the strong front she maintained. Cai felt his intense anger instantly give way to a crushing realization. He dropped the dagger and knelt beside her. He felt it, clear as day. The scent of her fear was overwhelming, mingled with the metallic tang of blood from his earlier wound. "The note," Cai said, his voice flat, demanding. "The note that said you submitted to Cale's strength." "Why?" Liana raised her head, her storm-colored eyes wild. Her breath caught a harsh, ragged sound. "It wasn't a submission, Rurik. It was a signal. I wrote it. I deliberately used language that Cale would expect from a female in the old regime, and I sent it through his most reliable runner." What followed was a rapid, low-pitched explanation. "The note had one sentence I knew Cale wouldn't read because he despises the medic scrolls. A specific Latin phrase written in the margin. It means, cash is compromised. The den awaits the cure." Cai stared at her. Cale, a brute of the old guard, would see the rest of the text and discard the margin as useless academic nonsense. Not only that, but Liana's desperation, her willingness to risk being labeled a collaborator, spoke volumes about her genuine loyalty to the true reform. "You risked your life for a cipher?" Cai asked, the weight lifting from his chest, replaced by a surge of furious determination. "We are fighting a wolf who relies on muscle memory and tradition," Liana countered, her voice regaining its steel. "Because of that," she continued, "we must rely on the things he dismisses: intelligence, subtlety, and information." I had to appear beaten, which meant I had to look like I abandoned your weak laws. Just like that, everything changed. Cai retrieved the crumpled note. He now had the final piece of information he needed. Liana was his unwavering ally, and the pack wasn't lost, they were simply waiting for a hero. Next, they would turn their alliance into a deadly, focused plan. Chapter 20, The Strategy of the Unclaimed. They moved deeper into the cave, using Liana's medicinal fire to warm the air. After that emotional exchange, a heavy silence settled between them, one of trust, shared trauma, and desperate plotting. "Cale thinks he has won the den," Cai began, leaning over the dusty map of the den's tunnels. Meanwhile, he traced the paths with the tip of his dagger. He will hold a dominance assembly within 24 hours to legitimize his takeover. That's why we hit him there, when his loyalists are overconfident. Liana pointed to the main den assembly hall. He'll be protected by his Praetorians, the loyalists who ran the old blood debts. They are fanatically loyal to the concept of dominance. Cai looked at Liana. With a single glance, they conveyed volumes. We are two unclaimed individuals fighting a battle of tradition versus reform. Our strength is what he despises, Cai declared. He picked up the discarded leader's mantle. Cale thinks this mantle is a joke on my shoulders, because I am unclaimed. We turn that joke into a weapon. We use the unclaimed law. Cai's plan was audacious. He wouldn't challenge Cale with brute force. He would challenge him with a trial by law, an ancient, forgotten Lycan tradition that required the challenger to prove the incumbent's moral unfitness before the pack. We can't beat him in a shift, Liana. But we can present Cale's treason list, the people he murdered under Victor's rule, to the entire den during the assembly, Cai explained, his voice low but sharp. Not only that, but he continued, we won't fight his wolves, we will strip away his authority and let the pack reject him. Liana hesitated. If you present the evidence, Cale will kill you before the pack can react. He will use the death challenge against you. I know, Cai agreed, a grim determination settling in his eyes. In that moment, he accepted the potential cost. But I have the ceremonial blade, a symbol of King Raven's authority, and I have you. You will be my witness of law, the person who verifies the crimes. He felt it, clear as day, the intense focus of the final strategy. This was the ultimate commitment to leadership, winning with truth, even if it meant risking the death challenge, a lethal, one-on-one fight to the death Cale would surely impose. Next, they would use the den's complex, winding passages to initiate the final charge. Chapter 21, The Approach. The approach to the den was done under the cloak of pre-dawn darkness. Soon after they finalized their desperate strategy, they moved with the silent, efficient grace of practiced soldiers. As the wind shifted, the scent of the den was strong, a mix of wood smoke, wet stone, and the thick, territorial musk of Cale's guards. They moved through the network of ancient tunnels Liana knew by heart. With every step he took, Cai felt the profound, electric current of tension running between him and Liana. They were bound together by a desperate, shared risk. In a narrow choke point, Liana paused, placing a hand on Cai's good arm. The air thickened around them, heavy and charged. Rurik, Liana whispered, her voice barely audible. Her voice trembled with genuine fear. If Cale forces the death challenge, you have to win. Not just for the den, but for the life of hope itself. You proved to me that honor wasn't weakness. Cai met her gaze. He saw not the cynical medic, but a fierce, vulnerable woman who had risked everything for his leadership. The space between them burned with unacknowledged passion, a desire forged in shared terror and mutual respect. And you proved to me that loyalty isn't blind, Cai murmured, his focus absolute. He didn't have time for tenderness, but the silent promise was clear. If I live, this connection, will be the first thing I claim. Instead of dwelling on the emotion, Cai acted. He moved forward, pressing the crumpled treason list deep into his tunic. Not only that, but he adjusted the ceremonial blade, feeling its polished, cool weight. What followed was the final, silent sprint toward the assembly hall. Just like that, everything changed, the sounds of the den became clearer, the deep bass of Cale's haranguing voice, the shuffling feet of the nervous pack, and the constant, chilling snarl of Cale's Praetorians. They were at the door. Cai took a deep, steadying breath. Next, he would face the pack in the dominance of Cale in a final, lethal gamble. This is it, the climax and resolution. We will execute the final confrontation, focusing on the high stakes, Cai's definitive choice of leadership over dominance, and the immediate, emotional payoff of his relationship with Liana. Chapter 22: The Trial by Law. The assembly hall was choked with tension, smelling of fear, sweat, and Cai's aggressive, territorial musk. Cai stood on a raised dais, radiating a brutal, absolute confidence as he railed against King Raven's softness. He felt it, clear as day. Cai thought he had already won. Cai threw open the side door. In that moment, the hall went silent. He walked in alone, wearing the king's mantle and carrying the ceremonial blade. Liana slipped into the shadows near the entrance, her presence a silent act of defiance. Cai stopped 10 feet from Cai's dais. The space between them burned. "Cai, you speak of strength," Cai challenged, his voice steady, echoing in the stone chamber. "I speak of law. I invoke the trial by law. I charge you with treason and the murder of loyal lichens." Cai roared with laughter, a booming, guttural sound that shook the rafters. Her name hung in the air as he sneered, "Rurik. The Unclaimed speaks of law? You brought paper to a wolf fight. I deny your charge. I demand the death challenge." This was Cai's only play, a lethal, one-on-one fight to the death, where Cai, the smaller, less dominant male, had no chance. Just like that, everything changed. Cai didn't hesitate. "I accept the death challenge." But then, Cai used his mind, not his muscles. He didn't shift. He waited for Cai to leap down, then quickly held up the crumpled parchment, Cai's death list. "Cai murdered these lichens. He is a butcher. I claim the fight is not over my strength, but over the truth." As Cai lunged, shifting into a massive, snarling wolf, a blur of muscle and fury, Cai acted. He didn't attack Cai. Instead, he used the ceremonial blade to slice his own palm deeply. The space between them burned with the metallic tang of Cai's blood. He grabbed a handful of the crumpled, blood-soaked parchment and flung the paper fragments into Cai's golden eyes. Cai howled, a terrifying sound of pure, blinding pain. Not only that, but the scent of Cai's blood, mixed with the strange scent of the old parchment and the shock of the injury, momentarily overwhelmed Cai's powerful senses. Cai used the split second of disorientation. With his scent in the air, Cai lunged, not for Cai's throat, but for the ornate mantle Cai was wearing. He ripped it off and slammed Cai's massive, blinded head against the stone dais. Cai slumped, dazed, beaten by a trick, not dominance. The pack was stunned into silence. Cai, bleeding heavily but standing, roared, not with primal fury, but with the voice of the king's law. "Leadership means protecting the truth. Cai is defeated. The Den is free." Next, the Den had to decide if they truly believed in the sight of an unclaimed male winning with courage and wit. Chapter 23: Tallying the Cost. The quiet that followed Cai's roar was absolute, broken only by Cai's low, defeated whimpers. After that terrifying confrontation, the pack looked at Cai, seeing not the weak guard, but the bleeding, triumphant symbol of a new, better strength. Roar, who had betrayed Cai, was the first to act. He didn't attack, he knelt, his head bowed in grudging, painful submission. Because of that sudden acceptance, the rest of Cai's remaining loyalists followed suit. The Den was Cai's. Cai collapsed, the loss of blood and adrenaline hitting him hard. The air thickened around him. Liana was instantly at his side, her medic training overriding everything. She pushed the heavy mantle off his shoulders, tearing strips from her tunic to bind his wound. While her pulse raced, she looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You absolute fool," she choked out, her voice trembling. "You could have died. You took the death challenge with a trick, and you risked everything on my cipher." Cai, exhausted and exhilarated, managed a weak smile. The space between them burned with the sheer intensity of their shared ordeal. "I only risk things I trust, Liana," he whispered, meeting her gaze. Her soul answered his confession. The walls of cynicism and inadequacy that had stood between them for years finally shattered. "Don't you dare die on me, Rurik," Liana murmured, her fingers moving quickly and efficiently on the wound. Her breath caught as she spoke. She leaned in, her scent of herbs and antiseptic mixing with the primal scent of their shared fight. Just like that, everything changed. She kissed him, a fierce, urgent kiss of relief, terror, and undeniable passion, right there on the blood-soaked stone floor, in front of the entire pack. He was significant. Not because of a mate bond, but because he earned it. Next, they would stabilize the den and address the future they had just fought for. Chapter 24, New Equilibrium. 2 weeks later, the smell of fear in the Ironwood Den had been replaced by the scent of wood polish and healing herbs. After that public kiss and the victory over Kale, who was swiftly sent back to the keep for King Raven's judgment, the den was finally quiet. Cai and Liana stood on the dais of the assembly hall, now refurbished and clean. They weren't holding hands publicly, but as the mark tingled, Cai felt Liana's quiet, steady presence beside him. She was now his appointed chief advisor, respected not just as a medic, but as a key strategist. With every heartbeat, he felt the genuine respect radiating from the pack. They were rebuilding the den, not out of fear, but out of a shared belief in the new laws. Roar and his men, having been pardoned, were now fiercely dedicated to their restitution duty. Because of that justice, the concept of leadership had finally sunk in. He closed his eyes, and his thoughts spun. "I realized my fear of insignificance was actually a fear of failing my honor. I finally understand that true strength isn't dominance, it's the quiet power to demand fairness." Liana leaned close, her whisper intimate and conspiratorial. "The den is stable, Governor. What now? Do you send for King Raven to take over? Do you finally go back to the keep?" Cai turned, placing his hand gently on her shoulder, a gesture of quiet, earned intimacy. The space between them burned with the promise of a future. "No, Liana," Cai said, his voice firm and infused with new confidence. "Raven tasked me to prove that leadership is stronger than dominance. I proved it. Not only that, but I am needed here. This is my claim now. This pack needs to be rebuilt by someone who understands their struggle." He paused, his eyes finding the remnants of Elian's family in the crowd. As though fate whispered, Cai realized his true purpose. "And," Cai added, his voice dropping to a tender murmur meant only for her, "I have found the one person whose honor I trust completely. I think it's time I start building a life here, because the unclaimed should be able to claim a home." Liana smiled, a genuine, joyful expression Cai had never seen before. Her world tilted as she realized the true depth of his commitment. Final scene impression, epilogue hook. They had won the war for the den, but the true threat, the ghost wolfjacks had mentioned in The Unknown Lycan power that truly toppled Victor, still lurked in the southern shadows. Cai had secured his territory, and he had claimed his love, but a dangerous, untamed force still awaited them, hinting at future trials. Cai knew his greatest test, the battle against the supernatural secrets of the South, was yet to come.